Okay, soon I'm going to be reading something on here from Briefolds the Mothers about witchcraft. That magic has always been the domain of women. And one of the things he gets into is once magic becomes a science, such as in agriculture, it starts to become then the domain of men for the most part. And a lot of people don't understand that what he ended up seeing is that there is always a motherhood. A motherhood is always there. It's how are the men structured around it that you don't see the motherhood. You're not supposed to see it. That is why the way women organize and get things done in American culture has kind of a magical quality about it. It seems just banal, like it's like the women plan all the things. But it's like, okay, well, who is the one bringing in this kind of money and is willing to do that amount of work for the amount of time they do? Because that's, of course, what it always comes down to. The kind of work they're doing for the length of time they're doing it. And that's everything about why men and women end up with any pay differences that creates a pay gap. What are they doing? How long are they willing to do it for? So the quality that really is this is kind of sad. What you're seeing, as Edward Dutton was pointing out, is the rise of witches. But instead of these being sort of these almost in the Starhawk Wicca world kind of light workers, that's Tradmom. Tradmom creates things almost out of magic. You just don't understand how women made this. And then they say, I just followed the recipe. But it doesn't, it's not until like some man comes up with a knockoff version from Hostess that comes out of machines. Well, then, yeah, but that's not magical. Little Debbie is not magical. Your mama's cookies are magical. There's probably somebody out there who's like, oh, no, my mom's terrible at cooking. Everything she makes is awful. But, but for the most part, there's something that your mother had done that there's some quality to it that you're like, how does she do that? And that mystery it's just that there's no other. That's simply what it is. It comes across as magical to men. And women might think that sounds stupid, but it's like, okay, so when I pick something up that's like your size with one arm and chuck it, does that ever kind of make you like throw you into a moment where you're like, holy crap, how did he do that? See, that's the other, that there's it's two different kinds of forces in nature, and that's why stories are written the way they are. That's why characters are the way they are. What we're turning toward is everything that was terrible about savages. So when people just kind of barely survived and this was during the era of motherhoods. Most of the world was living like this when European explorers were exploring the world. They found people living in the state of abject poverty and savagery, that they would just kill their neighbors willy-nilly for their stuff. And it was like a video game where, you just didn't even care about that you were killing all these people. People would drink each other's blood. That was not abnormal to hear about. To have somebody explain, yes, our tribe killed that tribe, and we drank all their blood. It's just not unheard of. It was the very idea, the concept that you would marry one woman for the rest of your life. One of the hardest things to sell to the world about Christianity. because the idea that you would have many wives, well, of course, if you can, and when in abject poverty, that's awesome. That means, like, you have 4 or 5 women who are fed. This guy's doing what it takes to keep them fed. He probably, this would then mean that they're also usually involved in some kind of cottage industry. And the whole thing is in that, as all motherhoods preserve matrilineal descent typically, in some way, shape, or form. It's sometimes you'll keep seeing this in some cultures into quite recent times. One of the most easy to point out right now is, by seeing it changed, is the House of Saud, Saudi Arabia. MBS right now is the king's son. He's inheriting patrilineally. That's not how it's done. Within the Ummah, matrilineal inheritance is the norm, and almost without, very, very normal, humans just do it, matrilineal ownership of children. So if for some reason there's a breakup of or however it's arranged, but the family of the mother usually takes in the kids across the species. So it's just laws just reflecting something that we already do. They already do all over the time, all over the place. But the idea of having sort of a lot of partners from a relatively small group. This is something that, yes, we used to do that quite a bit. Wow, something is going crazy on Discord. Okay. And you had a lot of cousin sex, fundamentally. It might be a second cousin. There's a wide variety of these, but that was relatively normal because you were in tribes and clans and things like that. And so you see this in ancient culture, sort of. But how do we know this? As again, it's House of Saud, but no. The royal house in Britain, notoriously marrying somebody who seems really close in some way related. It's because they're preserving the ancient pre-Christian tradition of how they bred. Because so many of those lines trace themselves back to the ancient Jarls and these other Norman and Germanic and all the way to Armenia kind of warlords of old. They all have all these different names, Allens and Jarls and stuff like that. So a wide variety of them. It would be kind of interesting for somebody to comment on that. I know my crowd is into that. What we're seeing for the common person is something that is kind of this twisted, Gnostic, Neoplatonic, like there's all these levels, and you could like get your elevation, and oh, you've never done mescaline, oh, you haven't opened your mind, and you haven't microdosed goobity goo. That everybody has to take lots of drugs so that they can think in interesting ways. There's nothing about that really is stoic, and anything that is stoic, say like Andrew Tate, in a lot of ways, what he advocates, not necessarily does, but advocates, what he sells, a lot of it is stoicism. You see it all over male improvement stuff, is stoicism. Already, the MGTOW movement is obviously it's obviously some confluence that where you see. Okay, hold on. What's going on here? Discord. There we go. that you can see that it's got this confluence of things going on where the MGTOW monk and kind of the movement of men into monasteries at different times in societies, that's fundamentally kind of what you're seeing, in a very American way. So versus kind of these childless witches who are kind of going mad. They've been fundamentally taught that there's this strange value that they have as really sort of endlessly as the whore rather than the mother, or that there was some way in which they were going to do something to the world or with the world, or and with some highfalutin set of degrees and this, that, and the other, and they start to realize, like, oh no, I'm basically, I have to make profits either for an employer or I have to start my own business and fend for myself and not much more or less to deliver value to the market, or I have to learn how to make magical cakes and get a guy to eat my magical cakes and hopefully put a ring on my finger. Maybe we'll be set. So this Neoplatonic kind of Gnostic thing, one of the things, abortion obviously is kind of the child sacrifice end of it. That becomes something that a lot of people didn't want to think. Even Salty Cracker had to admit, like, that he's like, I'm starting to see what you guys are getting. What really changed with the right in kind of the spiritual sense was evil is real. I mean, everybody gets that. Everyone is now, like, that you see people even post that evil is real. There will be things that happen that finally somebody on Twitter just posts evil is real. That they realize, like, oh my gosh, like, that's the difference, isn't it? But that the world and the idea of evil in the world, and it's like, no, because that's the thing. In creation, you can have evil. That's why God is something set aside outside of creation, and without that, the theology doesn't really work very well. And so it was so, and the idea of then Christ sanctifies the world, and so the very idea of humans being able to have the quality of magnanimity, that's key to this whole process of there possibly even being evil and be within creation, and the world is sanctified by God becoming man and his blood and being spilled on the world, and so it then becomes fundamentally that it is revealed that you have a duty toward the good, because that is the winning team, and you're made for it. At your human dignitas, you're made for the good. That's your ideal thing to do. It's harder, and it's the ideal thing to do, but only you really can do it. Some animals will break with instinct, but for the most part, animals follow instinct. They can't, and they would do something because it's the fundamental nature of what good is in them. When you see these cute things on, like, YouTube of, like, a fox helping a badger or something. I don't know. They're really cute when you see videos like that. The kitten riding on top of its friend the pig, and you're like, oh, okay, that's adorable, but also key to this is moments of humans putting a kitten and a pig together so that they could acquaint one another, and because the inherent good in that. This hope that there's something that you can learn secrets and get, like, up higher levels than other people. This is key to the left. This is, there's no debating this. No matter what anybody, Sticks, anyone wants to say, when you see old occultist stuff and you really kind of look at what they think the world should be like the what's it stones, the Georgia Guidestones, that was just the Rosicrucians. That was obviously the Rosicrucians. Like everything in it, like that's what Rosicrucians would do. The structure of it, that was all Rosicrucian. And so when you look into it, it's like, yeah, these were people who would be what we would think of as truly kind of the progressive types. But also sometimes these were ideas that it's like, okay, that seems like that's a great idea, but I mean, how's it supposed to work? And it's this idea of, oh, well, society will have to become more enlightened by doing all these things. Put them on these rocks. And a lot of these organizations will have, at some point, you find out that there's certain ideas that they have that you're like, oh, okay, you really want humans to do something they're very unlikely to ever do. Which that does give you a drive. I get that. So it does kind of make it like a religion. You are forever competing against the devil. And so what's the devil? That which is keeping these, what are obviously social and public policy issues guised as spirituality. That once you have these once you get what you want, it's an ideal world, and everyone's enlightened. Where that's not, that's at least not Orthodox or Catholic in Christianity. Christianity doesn't. Maybe the Protestants, some weird Protestant groups, but the Orthodox and the Catholics are like, no, you will not know the time or the hour. Most Protestants are like that too. Doesn't matter what you try to do, you won't know the time or the hour. You won't be able to stop it. It all gets rolled up like a Torah scroll. And so people end up leaving the left, and one of the things that really hits them is evil's real. It's just finally they see something that it's just like, you really have to be bad to do that. Something that came up, Ana Kasparian and the Young Turks brought up how the left can talk to the right, and it really is, no, you're too late. People like Vaush, like Destiny figured it out. Destiny figured it out. This is what the data says. All I have to do is try to look for the veracity of the data. But what these people are saying, if this is true, this is what we then know about crime, and really, this is almost immoral that nobody's really trying to do the very small number of things it would take to wipe out a very large amount of violent crime. People like Vaush, Ana Kasparian, they're still trying to dance around that. They're still trying to dance around who is committing crime and where. One of the most fundamental aspects of the strategy, and then how are you keeping them from committing crime over and over and over again? Being that the issue is recidivism. If being caught and in some way punished, and you're like, well, I learned my lesson, but no, the issue is recidivism, and recidivism of because these are people who are probably actually just undiagnosed socio and psychopathic people who will have to be separated from the group. They have to. They won't stop doing this. One of the key things I've noticed about this kind of Neoplatonic point of view is fundamentally is in intense narcissism, especially when it comes to the intellect, to the point that it starts to make people obviously kind of nuts. You see it a lot here in the Northwest among people who think themselves quite intellectually above higher level. They're on a higher level, see, because they went to this university and they got this degree. And they have a Tesla, and it makes perfect sense for them to wear a mask inside of it. and you're just sitting there. It's just, you know, if you take a CPR course, they teach you proper use of these things. Oh well, whatever, you know. What the recommendations and counter, you know, and what you're not supposed to do, and okay, whatever. It's your life, you know. You get to do what you want, and everything around all of that you know, sitting there like, well, but this is high school. This is high school biology, and if or not, maybe it wasn't in your case, but you're at a higher level. You're at a higher level. And some Trump-tard. Trump-tard. Look who's right now, Trump-tard. You. Fuck you, man. I was mad. I was mad. It's so goddamn funny. Oh my god, it's so old, but it's so fucking funny. The way he moves is so hilarious. But that's why he was famous, Dex. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of touch on that because of something I had said about this Neoplatonist kind of thing. And really one of the things about it is Jay Dyer did a fantastic... I've seen this now. I think he had 2 different ones where he touched on this, but one he literally went from thinker to thinker to thinker. And he said, so you replace this from Plato with the Neoplatonists. You replace this term with this. Then with this thinker, you replace this term with this. And he would quote things. He had his books, you know, he's breaking them out. He's, you know, just going through. So he gets into eventually, by the time you get to Marx, you're absolutely dealing with something based out of a Neoplatonic fantasy world. And because inevitably you get you get the communism, you know, at the end of the socialism. So it's like a ladder, like in Kabbalah, a tree that you slowly climb, and that you have to balance all these alchemical and spiritual forces to make it to do all this stuff. So now we're starting to see people who are kind of these right-wingers who we weren't all that Christian, and now we're sitting there and we're going, no, I get it. These are nightmare people. We answer to nightmare people, you know, these Democrats and these men in dresses and stuff like that. And, you know, it's like these people look like they're something out of a nightmare. I mean, they're intensely ugly people. Have you started picking up on that? Like, Jean-Pierre Luc Patrice, whatever her name is, she's kind of like, she has to be the good-looking person, you know? But boy, I mean, like, when you get into the Democratic activists, the writers, these, like, 5s at best, so often, that it's starting to really, like, there was this one the black people on, like, MSNBC and CNN a lot of times, like, real weird-looking, there's some weird-looking people on there. And, finally it started to hit me, like, somebody had said, you know, apparently it was, like, National Review guy from way back. Feminism is just a way that ugly women can have influence on society, you know. And it was brilliant. Like, yes, that's very true. And so that you're starting to see, like, oh yeah, and the gender sexuals tend to be ugly. So it's like, yeah, there's just SMV working. You're starting to see people who are they just get it. They just get, like, no, life is going to be hard for me because I'm not good looking. In some way, people look at me and they're repelled in some way. So they know that if then they have some kind of this special secret understanding of the workings of the universe, that there's one, that's their super Saiyajin anime power. And then it comes out when they finally get a chance to work the magical alchemical ritual with everyone of blood and fire. And yeah, there we go. I think, yeah, there.